want to bring in now our panel of Leslie Sanchez, Antjuan Seawright, and talk a little bit more about this from a political perspective. Leslie is, of course, a CBS News political analyst and a Republican strategist. Antjuan is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Hello to both of you guys. Leslie, do we have you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hi there, Leslie. You're a Republican. And it's funny even saying Republican, because it seems like under the Trump administration there have become different definitions to that label. There was the Lincoln Project Republicans who were opposed to President Trump. There were the Trump Republicans who were not necessarily those fiscally conservative Republicans that had been the bedrock of the party for so long. But as a Republican strategist, what is your initial reaction right now?
Well, first off, if this is the case and these are going to be the final numbers and it is actually verified, then many congratulations to the new president, right? We all come together as Americans once this is determined. So that's by far what we stand at as Americans. But I think, Lana, you were on the most critical question. This is not the Republican Party of George W. Bush, an administration I worked in, an administration that relied on suburban moms and more of the affluent suburban areas, that built on national security, kind of that three-legged stool of Ronald Reagan, economic conservatism, national security, some social issues. It's a very different Republican Party. It is Trump's Republican Party, which is what's going to be in the aftermath. It is much more middle class. It is much more rural. And there was a trade-off of middle class for the affluent, kind of diverse, increasingly diverse suburban areas. And what's the most important thing I think we have to think about today, on top of all this transformation, over 70 million people supported this president. And if you took out the fact of the big weight that you have of California and New York, that the president's popular vote, he wins by 1.4 million. Now that's ridiculous to discount those big states, but they weigh so much in terms of the anti-Trump effort, in terms of never Trumpers, in terms of the Lincoln Project. I think their effect was de minimis, was really small. What we saw was a rise in Hispanic support, which I'm really kind of interested in dissecting and breaking out. In Arizona, it broke for Biden. But in other states, in Texas, you're seeing growth. In North Carolina, you saw growth. You certainly saw the growth and the transformation happening in Florida. This is only midway through the story of the new alignment of the Republican Party, and to some extent, the Democrats as well.
I think that you should be congratulated as well, Leslie, and all Republicans who today are being gracious at this news, and sincerely, because it has been a divisive election. It has been a time where the United States, the very questions about our democratic process have been questioned. And Antjuan, I want to bring you in now because this has been 4 years in the making for Democrats. You're from South Carolina. You'll remember, of course, that Joe Biden really has a lot of credit to give to South Carolina in his ability to stand before the nation tonight and say that he is, in fact, becoming the next president of these United States. I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit, just first off, about your initial reactions to this news.
It's an emotional day. So many of us put blood, sweat, tears into the past 4 very long years to get to this point. And the country owes a great debt of gratitude to my friend, my political father and mentor, Jim Clyburn, because he literally rearranged the cards of history to get Joe Biden to this moment. And to the people of South Carolina, I took some hell when I said the road to heaven in the White House runs through South Carolina, and we were going to decide who the next nominee will be and have a large say-so in who the next president will be. Well, nevertheless, that has come to be true. And every time this country has needed recalibration, Lana, it's been because black voters have stepped up to the plate and did it. Joe Biden would not be here. He would not have been the Democratic nominee without strong, deep, and wide support from black voters all across this country. The same very hands that once picked cotton now pick presidents, and for the first time in American history, put a black woman on the ticket as the vice president-elect of these United States. I'm so thankful for all those things that have happened. And to Leslie's point, yes, President Trump still has a coalition of voters that put together themselves to make this race closer than most people think it should never have been. But at the end of the day, every time the American experiment decided to bend, the good news is it never broke. And I think that is what the story of this election will be. We decided to bend along the way, but we never broke. And that's why we have this historic moment for all of us.
It is a historic moment. And Antjuan, you're usually so exuberant. It's interesting to see you today, seeming to be a little bit
Lana,
somber,
it's so emotional
reflective.
for me because it's emotional for me because nobody knows what it took to get to this point. Nobody knows what it feels like as a black man to be able to speak in this moment. And the country owes black people so much to get us here, because if it wasn't for black voters in Wisconsin, Georgia, and Michigan, and Pennsylvania, we would not be here. We would not be here.
It's powerfully emotional, I think, for all Americans as we have been dealing with this pandemic, dealing with this election, dealing with racial reckoning, for us to recognize that as we are trying to sort our way through our history and look towards our future, that it is a powerfully emotional moment. To your point, Antjuan, I want to show our viewers the black voters and how they did turn out in large numbers for Biden, 87% to 12% for President Trump. We do know that President Trump was able to make some inroads with African-American males, but as you're saying, Antjuan, Joe Biden owes a great debt of gratitude. His presidency, actually even his candidacy, to African Americans. I remember well after winning South Carolina, he told his supporters emphatically then, because he had been counted out at that point, he said, "We are back," and that is absolutely owed to African Americans. Leslie, you heard Antjuan talking about how historic this is, how monumental and personally important this is to him. Kamala Harris is obviously the first vice president to be a female, the first female we have ever put in one of those top two seats. For you, as a woman, how does it feel?
It's excellent to have more women. This is exactly the foundational support you need to see the first woman in the White House as commander-in-chief, right? I wrote a book, You've Come a Long Way Maybe, talked about all of the aches and pains women have struggled throughout their careers, throughout the media attention, throughout just personal party politics, and throughout the challenges of raising money. In many cases, Hillary Clinton broke a lot of those barriers when it came to being the woman who could raise more money than anybody, regardless of gender. And what you're seeing now is a continuation, a transformation. But there's a lot of women on it down ballot, including Republican conservative women. There's a rise of pro-life conservative women that have gone, ethnically diverse conservative women that have moved forward, that they do not match the tremendous success of Democratic women in 2016. But in terms of equality and trying to get those numbers up, women are showing that they can. And by far, we've seen it on the state level as governors and seen it at state level as state leadership. But on the federal level, we have to continue to see those inroads, and we're seeing that today. So I think that's a tremendous step forward. But I keep bringing us back to the fact this is America's election, right? There's so many people. I am reminded continuously when people, say, thank gosh, they were tired of Trump, they were tired of his antics, they were tired of his race baiting. In many cases, we don't have enough time for the amount of frustration that Republicans, Democrats, Independents have had. And I do think a lot of this dismantling on those fringes, Trump did that to himself. But there are so many people that say, we miss this, we miss this. What we don't understand is this is not all these people loving Trump as much as they don't like politicians. They don't like the way Washington has worked. And when you talk about women, women are not seen traditionally as part of that establishment. We've always been the outliers. We come in to change a system that has not worked for us in the past, and ethnic minorities fall in that category too. So it's a big step in this movement this country is moving through, and for that I'm so proud, and I can tell you how much I have enjoyed every minute working with Antjuan, because he has the pulse of this country in a way that should be admired by everyone.
Gosh, look at these Republicans and Democrats getting along so well here. You know, Leslie, I told my 6-year-old daughters that this is going to be the first female vice president, or actually what I told them was this is the first time a girl is being elected vice president, and they couldn't believe that. This is, as you say, this entire election has had gains for women, but this comes at a loss for President Trump, and he is saying at this point that he is not interested in conceding. I'm wondering, given the historic nature of this election, of both Vice President Biden becoming the next president and Kamala Harris becoming our nation's first female and first person of color to occupy the vice presidency, does President Trump need to be concerned about his place in history if he doesn't become gracious in his concession here?
It's hard to think that the president can do anything in the last 20 minutes that he hasn't done in the past, right? You know, in terms of just grinding the country to a halt or going his own way. But I will tell you, there is a legitimacy to his concern that every legal vote was counted. If you talk to a lot, and people say, oh, it's just Trump supporters, and people try to discount that. That's half of this country who are really concerned about a Biden presidency because of policy implications. They're really concerned about, you know, leads that shrunk. We have to calmly and methodically move through in a way to legitimize this election so everyone can come together. And Trump is going to do his antics like he always does, but at the end of the day, it's going to take strong leadership and strong guidance to and a graciousness, quite honestly, on both sides to welcome the olive branch and start healing this country. But I will tell you, we're going to be in this situation in 2 years, and we're going to be in this situation in 4 years. We are in the middle of this chapter in terms of the topsy-turvy and how these voters want to see this country run. So everyone is on alert.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the future of legislation, but I wanted to bring you in as well, Antjuan, because I know that you have something to say on this point about graciousness and President Trump and trying to bring our country together.
You know, Donald Trump is going to be Donald Trump. We know who Donald Trump is. The good news is we know who Joe Biden is, and the even better news is Joe Biden knows us. And Joe Biden has taken hell from his own party because he has already said, although he may be running as a Democrat, he's going to be an American president. And for once again, in this little first rough draft of history, you will have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Republican-led Senate. I'm very confident that Joe Biden's ability to be able to bridge gaps and bring groups of people together who may not agree 100% on policy is what this country needs. That's why I'm totally convinced he received Republican support in this election in places traditionally people would have probably voted for a Republican president. The needs of this country do not have Democratic or Republican labels behind them. They're an American issues. On day one, we will still be struggling through this pandemic that has ripped the fabric out of who we are. We still will have eviction crisis to deal with, healthcare, education, infrastructure, all the things that did not get done in this last Congress, and that is what he's going to have to deal with on day one. And I believe that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is what this country needs, and they're going to do what they can to reach across the aisle to get this country back on track. Because I don't think, and Leslie and I agree with this because we've talked about it in private, I don't think this country, no matter where you fall on the political side, can afford to be ripped apart even more. That's not who we are.
But the sad truth of things, Antjuan, is that, as you mentioned, it looks very likely that there's going to be a Republican-controlled Senate. And the sad truth of things is that partisanship has become vicious, has become ugly in American politics. What do you think it will mean if, and I should say that there are still question marks about whether Republicans will in fact control the Senate. There are still 2 races in Georgia that are going to be decided, it looks like, in January. But do you believe that a Republican-controlled Senate will work together with Biden, especially given what Leslie said, that just around the corner are going to be the midterm elections, Antjuan?
I think there will be people in the Senate who are willing to put the partisanship aside to work with Vice President Biden, or work with President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. You mentioned that the temperature is very high right now, and that's very true. But most of us would agree that we've been in this posture before as a country, and leadership starts at the top. I do not see Joe Biden being the aggressive attack dog style leader as we saw respectfully from this president. I think he will come with an approach of trying to work together. I think his cabinet will be very inclusive to include people who may not be in his own party. And I think he will surround himself with the right people who have one agenda, and that's to make the American experiment better. Look, at the end of the day, we will face the midterms. In fact, the midterms will be so consequential because all around this country, lines for Congress are going to be redrawn by legislatures. You're going to have some of the most consequential governors up for re-election in 2022 that won in the 18 midterms, a year the Democrats did very handsome around this country. And you're going to have some U.S. Senate seats that will be on the ballot that could trick with the formula looks like in terms of what the majority looks like, regardless of how the 2 seats play out in Georgia. So there are going to be so many things going on, but I don't think anyone agrees that the base root thing this president will have to do, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, is deal with this coronavirus. That is the nerve center to most of the issues that we are facing right now.
All right, Leslie, I'll give you the final thought for the moment. What about you? Do you believe that a Republican-controlled Senate will cooperate with President Biden and specifically, to Antjuan's point, work together to pass right away some legislation regarding coronavirus relief?
We're still going to see how the makeup of that Senate looks like. Very positive about Republicans, but absolutely. I mean, this is not the first time around for, the cooling temperature of the Senate, the cooling effect of being the institution, the body that has fewer ripples and kind of understands the Obama administration, understand the Clinton administration. And it really depends on leadership in the House. I will say that Republicans have been very successful in working with Bill Clinton's administration on everything from telecom, just budgeting. So it's been divided Congress. Americans tend to like that. I think we'll see success on that, probably more so than you would see if it was one-party rule. But again, the clock is already ticking. I think there's going to be a strong analysis of understanding what middle-class voters want, what this economic populism movement is about, and a realization, including among Republicans, that Trumpism and this whole idea of Trump, that it doesn't go away without Trump, that there is a body of 70 million plus people who really feel the country has failed them, and they're looking for a different type of leadership. That's going to be the question for both sides.
Indeed. Leslie Sanchez, Antjuan Seawright, I'm going to continue checking in with you throughout the day as we expect to continue to get more reactions and more headlines coming in all day. But thank you.